Welcome back to Old Guy REI. We're back again to talk about our last accountability call, which was for the 30th. And thank you, Mikey, again for being here with me. I really appreciate it. And I always look forward to getting together with you.
I enjoy these talks. Thanks, Frank.
Yeah, of course. And I was just looking at myself in the video and realized I have Dion's shirt on. So I just wanted to talk about his book. It did get released the other day. We got our copy. Today's Sunday. We got our copy yesterday. Did you get one yet?
I ordered mine because I'm out in Hawaii. It's coming on Friday.
Okay, great. We can put the link, the Amazon link, if anybody would like to pick up a copy. I think it's a great value. It ended up being, what do you say, almost 500 pages, but it's broken down really well and um, categorized by chapters, so it's easy to go back to things that you might be interested in at any given time. Hopefully, and I am sure it's going to be a huge success. Just all of the information that's packed into that.
Dion helps out so much of us investors. Did it be good? Give him a solid review, great review, and I know a lot of people are looking forward to the audio book and Kindle versions as well, ebook versions. So we'll keep our eyes open.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing too. And I joke about, you know, every time I try to read a book, I just fall asleep for some reason. So I will wait also, and hopefully the audiobook will. I won't fall asleep because usually I listen to those while I'm driving. So we had a really well, it was kind of different the meeting this week, right? There was a lot of good information as far as real estate goes, but we did get a little sidetracked and ended up talking about mariachis and mice, if you can believe that. So hopefully folks will check in and check it out. And you and I were just talking because the meeting the meetings are held to help people with whatever they might be going through uh, with their portfolios or just in their journey in general. But it was really nice to see folks laughing that night, and I think we need that too, right? And I started to apologize for getting off track, but then, Jim reiterated that fact that sometimes we need to hear the other stuff too. So that was really special.
And these aren't in the beginning of the cause. It's we structure it, and you structure it more in the beginning. Let's take care of business. Towards the end, when things are wrapping up, then we can joke and laugh because real estate is hard work. So it's good to have something we can all laugh about and relax a little because I know I know it can get stressful at times.
Yes, it certainly can. Um, we had a couple new folks with us that night. I think Crystal joined us. Our friend Eden was on that night, and she shared a lot of what she's been through. But she has had some struggles as well. But it looks like things were turning around for her. So people should check in and listen to that because I think it's encouraging. She, when I first started talking to her, she was feeling super stressed and maybe hopeless at the time. She's in California and she also picked up a couple properties in St. Louis. So hopefully folks will check in and listen to what she has to say, maybe comment so uh, we can support her. But things did turn around. The property that she ended up hanging on to, she turned it into a rental. She was trying to sell it, but and she got a qualified tenant within the first week of putting it up for rent. So that was really good news. We had, let's see, Crystal was with us, and she is uh, is in Arizona. She had one unit. I believe that was a single family, and she was exploring the possibility of getting into small multifamily. We also had Ryan for the first time. He's been in the community for quite some time, and I didn't realize it, but he and his wife were on with Zuber quite a while back. So we'll have to go back and watch their interviews on the One Rental at a Time channel. He's also a contractor, and he has, I think they have about 20 doors now. He and I were on the phone the other day, and he shared some challenges. And you and I were just talking a few minutes ago about how, I don't know if it's like exposure, but we're hearing more and more about challenges people are going through, and that this real estate investing isn't always perfect. In fact, I would say most of the time it's not perfect, but so far everybody's getting through it, you know, managing to get through it. So I think that's encouraging. I think you were around when Dion was talking about, or I asked Dion, you know, why we don't see more people in the middle. We see like us from 0 to 5 years or 6 years and almost nothing until, you know, 12 to 20 years. We're all the people in the middle of their journeys. That would be great to hear from some of them. And Dion's comment was because a lot of people give up just he thinks just as things are going to start to turn around, right, in years 7, 8, 9, you know, they decide to sell or decide real estate's not for them. And I know, well, you and Cynthia and I are kind of at the same point where I think you're 3 years in now. Is that right?
to,
Two going on three.
yeah,
Okay. And we this month, August, is year 4 for the first triplex that we bought. So um, we definitely are hoping it gets easier moving forward. It hasn't been super easy yet, but I think that's part of the business. At the beginning of the call, we talked to Alex, and Alex was asking a question because he was wondering about seller financing options. You know, I think he has something going on with another investor. He's in Washington State. I believe he has a duplex already, and I think he said he has an alligator in Arizona, and he became an accidental landlord with that property. Um, and he's hoping not to get any more alligators, of course. But he ran across another investor in his area that he heard was thinking about getting out of the business, kind of retiring and not being a landlord anymore. And he was wondering what people could suggest on ways for him to maybe introduce himself to that person and let that person know that he is trying to grow. So if the man had any places he wanted to get rid of, you know, if he would consider letting Alex know first. And we kind of went back to the Cody and Christian explanation of how they got into business, just reaching out to current property owners, asking them, you know, maybe how they got started and how successful they felt they were, because eventually they wanted to be where that landlord was. And that opened a lot of doors for them over the years. And they have been very successful at picking up properties from tired landlords and the like. Um, I know you're always interested in hearing about seller financing. I think for me, that's always kind of been a strategy for later on when we run out of money or something. But now I don't think that's the case. What do you feel about it?
seller financing is a golden goose for me. It's this concept that I can't wrap my head around, but when I hear other people do it, and that's why I really like this call because Alex, he is presenting this situation. Then you're having all these people give their thoughts because they've done seller financing, and they will say, "Can you approach it this way, where both sides end up coming out as wins?" And it's like networking, and there's that friendship business line, but if you can find a way to make it work for both ends, then I don't see anything wrong with that. But
Yeah,
that's what I like as a new person is just understanding and seeing all the different ways you could come at it with seller financing.
yeah, and you're right. I think, for example, if he was successful at it and then he comes back to the meeting and shares what he ended up doing, it just helps us learn more and more each time and maybe be better ready if it ever comes up for us. Um, and I think, Cody, who's usually on our calls from Wisconsin, he's done a few seller financing deals. So we've learned a lot from him. He's done a 50-40-10, which is a useful tool when the owners have quite a bit of equity in their properties. And those are kind of some of the things we need to learn, or when you're doing your research for that. Because if the owner doesn't have a lot of equity, then a 50-40-10 might not be a good option. And it doesn't have to be 50-40-10, right? It could be 60-30-10 or any combination of those. But typically, we as the buyer would come in with 10%. And then you can get a regular loan for the first, get the seller financing on the second, and then talk about terms with the seller. And hopefully, the seller is kind of already had some knowledge about the process, because I think that's the biggest challenge is if the seller doesn't know what you're talking about and has never done a seller financing deal, then they might think you're trying to scam them or something. So it's nice when the owners have been doing it for a while and maybe they already have experience with it.
With my minimal experience, and I've never done seller financing before, it's just good to hear the tools that are available, like PropWire. You can check the equity of a property, or like even looking at the property records. And I know a lot of people have used Bob Langworthy from Main Bean Counters. If they do get into a seller finance contract, then Bob can come in as the CPA and discuss the tax benefits when it
Yeah,
comes
there
to.
are a lot of tax benefits for the seller if they don't want to get that lump sum of cash right away, or if they want to defer taxes. There's a lot of ways they can do that. Another thing we talked about that night was, and something that, I joke about being teased about being in 4 or 5 different markets, but over the last few weeks, I've run across people who are in 4 or 5 different markets. So it's kind of feeling like we're not alone out there doing that. They all have different reasons for being in different markets. I know, well, you're just in one market right now. Do you think you would ever consider a different market?
I'm trying to explore Hawaii and see if there's any potential out there. But we've talked. Anna Kelly is diversified, and so is Aaron Amin. I know he's in multiple markets out of state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was nice to hear. Um, we all we often end up talking about property management because being out of state investors, most of us have PMs. And Ryan was saying that we, as the customer, need to tell the PMs how we want things done, not let them tell us how things are done. I think there might be a little bit of another side to that because, I don't know, just say, for example, rent collection. We think one thing about rent collection, or if the tenant's late with rent, we think we should be giving them a notice right away. But sometimes in specific markets, there are timelines, so you can't really do that. So the property manager will come back, and I'm always open to that. I'll let them explain to me why they do it a certain way, and then either understand it or I'll disagree with it. But at least I know if I'm right or wrong in disagreeing with the way they're doing it. So yeah, I think on a customer service standpoint, we are paying them to do a job, but we also need to educate ourselves on the rules that they need to abide by as well, and that might give us a better understanding of the process overall and less frustration on our part. You and I also talked about some investors thinking that the process is going to go a certain way, right? I'm going to buy this property. It needs to be rehabbed. I'm going to make everything new. I'm going to get a great tenant and everything's just going to be great. And sometimes there are things we don't foresee. Like sometimes if you're doing a rehab, sometimes the timeline isn't just as straight as you hope it would be. You're going to run into hiccups. You're going to have longer holding times because of certain things. And we've seen that recently with a couple of people in the group where, you know, they were kind of all gung ho about their new property, and then this thing happened. So they either have to pivot, they have to come up with more money to hold it longer. Um, and I hope that doesn't discourage them, because we've all had those kinds of things happen to us, and we're still wanting to move forward. You shared last week some challenges you had with the tree and that expense, and you thought it was on the other property and it wasn't. It was on yours. Things like that. Um, but then too, you were saying too that you have some other expenses coming up that you need to be ready for. What was that about?
Yeah, that was on the single family I had, and it was taking some time to get the repairs done. It was occupied, and the tenants, they would be with the schedule, it would change. Finally able to get in, and I know the handyman or the repairman, their schedule was backed up. So finally we got them in there, and now it should be finished by next week. So that's another expense that I was planning for, but for some reason it just feels like it's coming all at once. So I'm glad like the reserves are gonna save me, but it's like just another thing you gotta prepare for and budget for. But just the timing of it, I wish it would have been more spaced out, but it just comes at one time, it feels.
Yeah, it is what it is, right? And I think we always talk about the reserves and how important they are, but there's I heard of someone else in the group that was having issues with the property, and they decided it was best to sell it, right? And with what we went through last year, that was even a suggestion for us by some of our friends, that sometimes you have to take a step back to be able to keep moving forward. So if we sold one of the properties, it would help replenish our reserves, and we would be able to hang on until everything else was stabilized. Everything was just so mixed up last year. And you and I were just talking, because I don't really think since we started that we've had consistent months without an issue, or that everything was full, things like that. So, if you're, it's nice with the multifamily, like the triplex, we were just saying one unit is getting turned, but the other two still carry the mortgage and have cash flow. But if it's a single and we have to pay the mortgage for that month or the next month, then that could add up kind of quick.
Financial firefighter, he said that he bought so much so fast. Then he didn't buy for 4 years. And only now he's buying again. When he said that line, that was very interesting to hear because you you can get a better idea of what it takes to stabilize and in terms of growth.
Yeah, yeah, I think that was really wise. And he did share too that it helped a little bit because, he's so into um, his YouTube and things like that, social media. He's really involved in the ORAC community and helping Zuber with some of the calls. So that distraction was good for him. I think most of the people in the group were thinking, 4 years, how could you go 4 years without buying something? But I think it worked out well for him, and he went into these new deals with a little bit clearer head, and hopefully the portfolio that he started with is all stabilized now too. I haven't really dug into that with him yet.
The hunting, I get a sense that a majority of the people, they love hunting. They
Yeah.
love doing the numbers when you're on the search. And that's something I'm going through is like once you close, you buy, it's like you get that adrenaline rush. You want to buy again. But
Yeah.
I have to work on quelling that and smashing that because I'm not even, I need time on this one before, but what did I do? I went out and I started talking with different Hawaii realtors and lenders and saying, what can I do? What else can I buy? But
Yeah, I know. And especially in your market of Hawaii or where you live in Hawaii, not where you invest yet, but that's a challenge in itself because things are so expensive. Were there, I don't know if Mark touched on it, but were rules changing as far as short-term and midterm rentals there?
they're very strict. They're only allowed in certain areas of the island, and it's mainly in the tourist sections. But I think even the hotels, they're really putting pressure on those Airbnbs and the short-term rentals. So those might start fading out too. You never know what type of rules they're going to put in.
Yeah, and I know you were smart enough not to be analyzing the deal on short-term rents, right? You would first go into it making sure that it would hold its own as a long-term rental. Then a short-term rental is kind of a plus, but you don't want to use those short-term numbers and end up not being able to run it like a short-term. And then it's going to be an alligator if you have to try to long-term rental. So yeah, seemed like tricky. And but that's not just in Hawaii, right? It's pretty much everywhere. I know in Washington, it's helping that they're becoming um, more open to like ADUs and things like that because then people are buying larger properties and subdividing and building an ADU and then they're able to sell that ADU and kind of have a free house, when they're all done. So that's pretty cool. We were talking too about permits and things, and we got into a little bit of contractor talk about AFCI breakers, which are arc fault breakers, and they're super sensitive. A lot of times, the challenge is when you rewire a house, all of the new circuits are good and all the connections are new. But on the old circuits, if you try to put that kind of breaker in, and you plug in a vacuum or something, that motor that's starting up will set off the breaker and shut it down. And so hopefully the inspectors don't make you replace all your breakers with those type. Most of them realize what's going on and they'll just have you put them on the new circuits. We talked, and so sometimes what homeowners will do once they get their final inspection passed, they will go in and replace those AFCI breakers with standard breakers because they're not as sensitive. There might be, I mean, some people might think there's a little danger there, but I don't think I don't think it's a big issue, especially if you had original breakers in the beginning on those circuits. Um, Another thing we talked about, well, it was kind of twofold. It was clients that we've worked with in the past that sometimes you don't want the homeowner there while you're getting an inspection because the homeowner can kind of mess things up. I had one who was super unhappy because we had to put occupancy sensor switches in the bathrooms, and those come on when you enter and they shut off after you leave, which is an energy saving thing. But she really hated the switches, and she was there with me that day. And she was arguing with the inspector, telling him how much she hated him, how stupid that rule was, and this and that. And I was trying to tell her, please don't ruffle his feathers because it'll make it hard from here on out. So finally, she did listen to me. We got the thing passed, and then she changed her switches after the fact. But sometimes the newer technology doesn't work well in older homes or with older clients, I should say. We've had that discussion too because people always ask, how do you find a contractor that you want to work with? But we also flip that around and talk about how do we find a customer that we want to work with as a contractor? And a lot of times, if we're doing kitchen and bath remodels, it could be 6, 8 weeks or longer that you're there with the customer. So it's kind of like I tell my customers, if you don't think you can get along with me for that long, let me know now because we won't even start. I don't want to have trouble moving on down the line.
There's the investor. She's working with the contractor out of state, and the communication from the investor to the contractor, if I heard right, it was multiple times a day.
Yeah.
So it's good to hear. It's good to see the investor side of it and the contractor side of it, because there's that side, but there's also the contractor side who may be dealing with multiple projects or having multiple things being taken care of. And how is that looked at both sides? Because I know one side needs to get the work done, get that unit fixed up and ready to rent. But on the other side, it's the contractor, all of the stuff he's trying to do.
Yeah. And there's one thing also that I let our customers know is like if you're going in to do whatever bathroom remodel, right? The first day looks great, like you got a ton done because the you got the bathroom torn out and everything's ready to go. But then when you start doing your wiring and your plumbing, it doesn't look like you got much done. So then the customer thinks, oh great, it started out great and now it's fizzling out, but that's not the case. So I try to prep them on that too. I think Jim and I were talking about that fact. And I was saying I like to walk my customers through the process all the way. That way they know the first few days will look great. You won't see much, or it won't seem like a lot is being done. Then we need to wait for, if we get cabinets installed, then they come and template for the new countertops, but then it's 2 weeks before the new countertops are in. So we can't really come in and do plumbing or install appliances. So if you try to prep them, it's worked pretty well for me over the years.
This might be
But
hard to say, but in a larger scope, what is a reasonable amount of communication to have? Like if you give out the timeline and the client is messaging you multiple times a day or calling you multiple times a day, is what's a good range for you?
yeah, I haven't had a customer like that for a long time. But one thing that is a little bit of a challenge, for example, if you're doing something, uh, whatever it is, and you get part way and it doesn't look right. I know it doesn't look right because it's not finished, but the homeowner comes home and thinks, why did he leave it like that? And most of them will just ask the question and then I can explain why it's like that. Some think you're going to leave it like that and then they get upset right away. Um, so I think micromanaging, I haven't had too many clients like that, but it is kind of awkward because you just know they're going to call you and ask you why it's like that. So again, in the beginning, I didn't do that. In the beginning, I didn't, I guess, understand people enough to know I better explain this thing all the way through. That way they know what's coming. Um, and please ask me if you have a question. Don't just assume I'm going to leave it like that or I did it wrong. Things like that. And it's kind of weird because most of the time, if someone's remodeling a kitchen, it's the first one they did and it's the last one they're ever going to do. So if I have a customer that has already done 3 kitchen remodels and I'm doing the fourth, they already know, right? They already know what they're going to go through. So that's helpful, but that's rarely the case. Usually it's just one and done. Or if they have a couple bathrooms, then we can do the first one and they already know what's going to happen for the second one. And they're a lot more at ease with the process.
Yeah, that would be a good conversation to have with the group, is micromanage versus manage, and what you think is a good guideline, how you navigate that, because that's something I've had to struggle with property management, is at what point am I being too micromanaging, or am I? I try not to. I try my best not to. And from the feedback, at least I get from them, hopefully they're telling the truth, is that I'm one of the better clients they have. But when it's a serious thing, you actually have to get on them. And it's okay for you to get on them, because if you don't, then things could get go unnoticed and it'll actually be your fault and it'll cause more problems than necessary.
Hmm. Yeah, you were just talking about how sometimes we struggle with getting pictures from the contractors. I know I've been guilty of that myself, but not for any reason. It's just like when I get there, I want to get to work and I'm working, and by the time I know it, I'm finished and I haven't gotten pictures of the process. For me, that happens fairly regularly, unless my client is like really on me saying, "Hey, if I don't get pictures, I'm not going to pay you," or something crazy like that. That's never happened, but a lot of times too, we've heard people say, Frank can send me a picture of this. I have no idea what I'm looking at, so I don't know if it's right or wrong anyway. So there's that. And, but I think I like what you're doing because we've been able to talk, right? And you'll ask a question and I'm able to explain how I do it or how it's typically done. And then, when you're talking to your contractors, eh, you sound more educated. So they're going to treat you different because this guy knows what he's talking about. So, but not everybody has that. And so I can see that's a challenge. And you mentioned on the call that night, the person was saying that her personality is, she needs to be, or at least in the beginning, she felt like she needed to be involved. She needed to call and get updates every so often. But realistically, you're just going to have someone get tired of taking your calls. And I think that person did stop taking her calls for a while. And then I think her husband ended up having to fly out. So she's in St. Louis too, but she's in California. So her husband went out and checked on the job. And it was nice that they had that luxury, but some of us don't. So yeah, I think that might have pushed her contractor away, at least on
And
that one project.
and I did that in the beginning. I had really no trust, so I didn't know what to expect. And I would constantly be emailing like, "Hey, what's the status? What's the status?" I think it was getting to them. They responded back and it's like, you know, don't worry. We know how to work under these tighter timelines.
Right.
Just we'll make sure we'll get this taken care of. Sure enough, it did. And once I saw that, I was able to relax a little bit more because the trust was built in.
Mhm.
And I think maybe that's something she was going through, is just waiting. Once she can get that trust established, it's like, okay, I can lay off. And
Yeah, and sometimes it just goes haywire because I think she said they started out great. The project was going right along. Maybe he took on too many projects at once and wasn't, just dedicating his time to that project and it was dragging out. Um, I think that's a really, I don't know, there's a fine line between how much you should check in. I think we've also talked in the past about always thinking the worst, right? So what you were just saying, you hadn't heard back from your guys and you're just, the the stress is building up and you're wondering, why can't you at least call me back? And your mind goes to places that it doesn't need to go. It usually ends up working out if you just let them do their thing. I guess a lot of us might wonder if you don't get updates, maybe they missed a step or maybe they left out something that was important to you. I think sometimes the contractor might make a decision that I forget where I heard it, but somebody was expecting to get a new door, like a new entry door. They wanted to save them money, so they refinished their door and it looked good, but that's not what they agreed on. So things like that, there's just so many things that could uh, and they were good intentions, but it wasn't what the customer wanted. So maybe that contractor shouldn't have made that decision without checking in first.
That's been a huge element for me is being able to reach out to you. And I know we have multiple contractors on the calls just to pre-game things, saying, hey, this is what repairs I might be looking at. People have brought their projects to you and you kind of give them a rough idea of, yeah, I would say this number is okay, it's reasonable. It's harder because everyone's in different markets, but just to get a general idea of the work that should be required, then you can relay that over to your property management or your contractors. Once you have those words, the contractor talk, or I'm not too sure what to call it, but once you have that in place, they're realizing, oh, okay, they know more than
Hmm.
they're educated on this, so I better kind of keep it straight with them.
Yeah, it's not your first time. And one thing I realized over the years, these last few years, everybody thinks prices in the Midwest should be lower than California. And I always was nervous about, like, if you call me and say, "Hey, I'm going to get a new front door. What should I pay?" Here, people are charging, a couple $1,000s these days with the door and the labor and everything. So I would expect in like St. Louis that it might be 1,000, but those guys are catching up with us too. So you just never know. But it's good to get a few estimates, check in with a few of us on the call, and just kind of get a feel. I know Kevin, he's got a big project going down there in San Diego, so we've talked a lot, and he's good about saying, "Hey, this is the price I'm getting to, insulate or electrical or whatever it might be," and then we're able to give him some feedback. And because at first I think it sounds super expensive to him, but then once he realizes that that's kind of the norm, then he feels better about moving forward. So
And
it is.
yeah, and you've helped me with inspection reports, and you told me about this old house, so I have that in my algorithm now, and I can watch some of those. Lumberjack landlord, he's great because all of his pre-recorded live streams, you can kind of watch that, understand all of the different ways you can stabilize and optimize properties. So just having that in my back pocket, it's been huge because I got asked a question about, oh, do you know what a defective thermal seal is in a window? And I was able to answer that. And I think even my property manager was surprised. So yeah, I thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah, it's good. Well, I don't know what will happen on this week's call, but hopefully it will be just as good as the last. And we'll come back again next week and discuss those highlights.
Yeah, and with the one rental at a time, Michael Zuber, he finally got those tickets out for the Vegas event.
That's
If you
right.
just Yeah, if you just type in one rental at a time on Google and Eventbrite, Brite, the general is 343 and the VIP is 795, meals included. And I like that he said in the 25 years he's been investing, this is the second buyer's market he's seen. So that piqued my interest.
Yeah, it would be nice to be in position to capitalize. I know, like for us, this year is all about stabilization. Hopefully, we'll be able to get back into position if we want to buy some more and start looking for some other deals. So you never know what the market's going to do. He's been pretty accurate though, as far as interest rates staying where they're at and things like that. I always look forward to catching his daily financial news. So thank you again, and we'll chat with you next week.
Thank you.
All right.